Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Lifeline for Daily Living. Yes, this is the place where you can find the answers to your mental health, relationship, and family questions. I'm your host, Jim Hewitt. Glad you've tuned in today. I think you're going to find today's topic very interesting, so I hope you'll stay tuned because we'll be right back. All right. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Lifeline for Daily Living. So glad that you joined me today. I've been thinking a lot about time. Scripture teaches us that there's a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up, a time to war and a time to cease from war, and everything is intricately tied to time. You go back all the way back to the book of Genesis and God's 6 days of creation there, and he rested on the seventh, and every time he's creating something, he says, and this, in the morning and the evening was the first, second, third, fourth day. Think a lot about time. Do you? You think a lot about time? I hear people all the time say, I just don't have enough time. I wish there were more hours in the day than there currently are. Time. I've got to be here. I've got to be there. I've got to schedule this. I got to keep my schedule. My schedule is so busy, people say. Time. We are born in time, and there's a time that we will die as well. Time marches on. There's nothing that can stop it. There's nothing that can slow it down, even though a lot of products out there kind of espouse that. Time keeps marching on. Think of it this way. Did some calculating here not long ago, and here's what I came up with. There are 52 weeks in a year. There are 365 days in a year. There are 8,760 hours in a year, and there are 525,600 minutes in a year. Now, let me say that again because I stumbled over that a little bit. There are 52 weeks in a year. There are 365 days in a year. There are 8,760 hours in a year. And there is 525,600 minutes in each and every year. That has been that way. Go all the way back as far as you want to go back. There are only 24 hours in a day. That's it. There are no more. And once that time is gone, it's gone, and it cannot be recaptured. No matter how much we want to try to buy it, no matter how much we want to borrow against it, no matter how much we beg for more of it, it's just not going to happen. Once time is gone, once this moment is gone, it's gone forever. You can't go back and repeat it. You can't go back no matter how much money you have, no matter how much you beg, plead, and borrow, how much you steal. You're not going to get time back. I guess the older I get, the more I come to realize that time just keeps marching on. There was a time in which there were a lot more hair up here, and it wasn't near as gray as it was. And I got up one morning and poof, it was like, wham, there's all this gray hair, wrinkles, things that you could do at 19 that you can't even think about doing now. Time keeps marching on. So, if time keeps marching on, and if I'm going to live that time out, well, how am I going to do that? Do I just sit around and keep complaining about that there's never enough time? I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do the other, but there's never enough time. What is your concept of that? What is your perspective of that? And that's what I want to help you with today. Knowing that time keeps marching on, When you finish this podcast today, it's done, right? Never go back and I guess you can through going back and pressing replay again. You can repeat it, but it's gone. This moment will be gone, and there's nothing you can do to get it back. And so how do we deal with this thing called time, where we're not so depressed by it, where we're not so anxious because of it, and we're not fearful because it keeps marching on with or without us? How do we do that? Well, let's talk about that for a minute. I think in order to have a proper understanding of this whole concept of time, I think we must correctly appraise our time. Now, if you're going to get a loan for a house, or some piece of property, that house or that property is appraised. An appraiser comes out and gives you the market value of the house, and it's appraised. Or if there's a precious family heirloom and you want to know what the value of that is other than the sentimental value, you take it to an appraiser. Well, I want you and me to become our own appraisers today. I want you and I to correctly appraise time. Think about it. How valuable is your time? How valuable is your time? Think about it. You and I wear watches. We have on our cell phones, we have a clock on our cell phone. We have a clock on our computer. We have a clock in our living room, in our family room, in our bedroom. We wake up to an alarm that goes off when the clock reaches a certain point in the morning or at night. We are totally consumed by time. Now, in order to have a proper or correct appraisal, we need to think about time management. Employees punch a client time clock, fill out a timesheet. I've had to do that. I'm sure you've had to do that. All of this is about time. There are deadlines that we have. And so I think we need to correctly appraise our time. Think about it this way. Time is sacred. Time is sacred. I'm going to say this several times throughout this podcast. Once this moment, once this day, once this hour passes, there is nothing you can do to get it back. It's gone. If you look back over the past few months or the past year or maybe the past number of years, you can think about, man, I was just at the right place at the right time, or I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Everything is about time. Time is sacred. God created time. It's not man's idea. Man didn't come up with that. God came up with that. The evening and the day, it was the first, second, third, fourth day, whatever. It's His idea. So time is sacred. But think also about the shortness of time. I've just become more and more acutely aware of how short time is. It seems like just yesterday that I was 19 years old getting married, and now here it is in a blink of an eye. My wife and I this coming May will have been married 45 years. Just in a blink of an eye. We talk about that in terms of children. It was just yesterday I was putting on their diaper. It was just yesterday they were saying their first word. It was just yesterday they were taking their first step. It was just yesterday I put them on. Time gets away from us. The shortness of time. Someone put it this way. And I'm going to put this up on the screen for you because I think it's really important. So you read along as I read this. When I was a child, I laughed and wept. Time crept. When as a youth I dreamed and talked, time walked. When I became a full-grown man, time ran. And later, as I older grew, time flew. Soon I shall find, while traveling on, time is gone. Wow. I think we need to do a proper appraisal of time. that time is precious, time is sacred, time is short. I can remember, and I'm sure you do too, if you've lived very long at all, you can remember back when you was a kid that it seemed like summer just dragged on and dragged on and dragged on. And when school started, that just drug on and drug on. It seemed like it took forever for us to get to be 16 where we could get our driver's license. See that? And we look back on that, it was just yesterday. I hear that phrase all the time. It was just yesterday. I think we need to do a correct appraisal of time. That time is sacred and it's short. And once it's gone, you can never get it back. Now, so we need to correctly appropriate time. But I think we also must consciously appropriate time. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean by that we need to use our time wisely. That we need to think of it in terms of time management. When I get up in the morning and then when I go to bed at night, what am I going to do in between? Making full use of the time. Remember, there's only 8 hours in a work day. There's only 24 hours in a complete day. That's never going to change. They're not going to add to it or take away from it. I know that during the changing in the fall, we fall back, time changes, or we spring forward in the spring. So we correct that hour, but there's still 8 hours in the workday, 24 hours in a given day. I think we need to conscientiously appropriate time. We need to be conscious of that. That we make the day, we make the hour, we make the everything about that day and that hour, we make it count. You've heard me say in other podcasts, the word carpe diem, seize the day. We need to seize every moment of every day, and so we need to do that simply because once it's gone, and we'll never ever get it back. Well, when do we do that? When do we appropriate time conscientiously? When? Well, there's a phrase that we often use. Well, I'll get to that one of these days. One of these days I'm going to go there. One of these days I'm going to take a trip there. One of these days I'm going to accomplish this. One of these days I'm going to start back to school. One of these days. And what happens is, before you know it, months have gone by, years have gone by, decades have gone by, and you're still saying, one of these days. So I think we need to think about, I think Paul says it so adequately in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 2. He says, now is the accepted time. Now he's talking about salvation, and I agree with it, but I think in a broader context, now is don't put off to tomorrow what you can do today, as the old saying goes. We need to think about today, doing it today, not putting it off. What is that one thing that you could describe, that you could list, that you've been putting off? What is that? It may be something as simple as painting a room, or redecorating your house, or buying a house, or building a house, or going back to school, or starting to work out at the gym, or what is it that you keep putting off? That's what I'm talking about here. The when, we've talked about why we should do that, because it's sacred, and once it gets away from us, we're never getting it back. The why is the when is now. Start thinking about your time now. Stop playing the game with yourself of, well, one of these days I'll get to that. One of these days I'll think about that. One of these days I'll do that. One of these days, well, no. There are people in cemeteries all over this planet who have said one of these days, and they never got to fulfill that one of these days dream. So we've talked about the why, and we've talked about the when, but now think about this. We must also consistently apply time. How in the world do I apply time? Well, the Bible, in particular, the Apostle Paul, he uses the word walk. In the New Testament in particular, the word walk is used. And when the word walk is used, it's really talking about a way that we behave, ordering our behavior out after. So when Paul says we should walk by faith and not by sight, he's talking about it's not just a matter of believing it and having faith, it's a matter of putting that faith into practice and living it out every day. So how should we walk here? How do we apply this thing of time? Well, let me suggest to you that we be about intentional living. Intentional living. So many times we get caught in this trap of well, it's just going to happen. I'll just wait for it to happen. All I have to do is just sit here in my easy chair and it's just going to happen. I just need to wait for it to happen. No. That's those one of these days kind of thing. What are you doing to intentionally live? Jesus said, I have come to give you life, not just life, but a superabundance of life. Now, what are you doing with that life? Are you living intentionally, or are you becoming more reactionary, that you react to things that happen to you? That's not the way God wants us to live. He wants us to live intentionally. He says in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 17, Paul says, be consistent and be persistent in finding out and understanding what the will of the Lord is. Well, you don't do that just by passively sitting back. You become intentional. It may be through a guided Bible study. It may be through attending a small group. It may be 1,000 different things that I can list here. But you need to be intentional about it. You need to get up and you need to put one foot in front of the other and be intentional about living. It's not waiting until it happens to you or for you. You get out there and you live intentionally. Each day, carpe diem, each day, make each day, each moment of each day count. Don't just sit back and well, one of these days it's going to happen. No. So we are living intentionally. Secondly, I think is that we need to live a governed kind of life. A governed kind of life. God wants to guide us. God wants to be there and be in front and guide us. He wants to bless us more than we're willing to be blessed. And so this is so he says, be filled with the Spirit. Paul says, be filled with the Spirit. Let God so fill your life that He is your constant guide. And so if I'm in a strange land, a strange city. My wife and I like to go out west on our motorcycle. If we have a map, and that map is our guide. If we can't find something, we kind of pull over and we ask for directions. Somebody is guiding us. Well, the same thing here. I often tell clients this old saying: if you shoot at nothing, you'll hit it every time. If you're just kind of going about your life willy-nilly, and just I'll just go over here and do this, and maybe I'll go do this, gee, what am I going to do today? No. Remember, once that time is gone, it's gone. Think about this. Now, yesterday is gone. There's nothing you can do. You can't literally run back time. You can't do that. It marches ever forward, and so you want to live a life that is guided by somebody who has created life, and that's God, who knows more about your life than you know about your life, who's not confined by time, not confined by today and tomorrow, and yet He knows it all in one. He's not limited by time or space. And so we need to be governed under His leadership. And then also, I think a way to live is to live joyfully. joyfully. For some of you, if you're really honest with yourself, some of you live a half glass full life. Your glass is always half empty. It's just half empty rather than half full. It's just half empty. It's always gray outside. It's always gloomy. Even if it's sunshiny outside, 75 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, you will find something to put a cloud over your head. Joyful living. Now, I had a person I was talking to a person just the other day who talks continually about being happy. Want to be happy. Well, what's the difference between happiness and joy? Happiness is external. So if you do this, and I'm happy, then I can be happy with this. If the weather's nice outside, I can be happy. If I get the right job with the right income, I can be happy. Joy is internal. Happiness is external. Joy is internal. I'm talking about living a joyful life. Joy is kind of like the music of the soul. It really is. Joy is what gets you up in the morning. It's what gets you moving of a morning. Joy is what happens at the end of a full day, even though you're tired physically and maybe even mentally. Joy is, I'm happy to have had this day, even though it had its frustrations. It's been a good day because I've been alive. I've been kicking. I've been out there doing it. It's been a good day, and you can rejoice in that. See that? But if you live your life with happiness, and you can't reach. The reason you can't find happiness is because happiness is always external. If something is external and it meets your need today, it may not meet your need tomorrow, and it certainly didn't meet your need yesterday. It forever changes. You see that? So you want to live a joyful kind of life. This whole thing of time is so vitally important. It's the basis of which everything else in your life is built. Because if you squander time, you won't get it back. You just simply won't get it back. Why do that? Now, I know there's going to be frustrations. I know there's going to be pitfalls. I know there's going to be detours. I know there's going to be frustrations. I know all of that. But still, you can redeem the time. That's what I'm talking about here. Redeeming the time. Maybe last week you squandered a lot of time. Maybe last year you squandered a lot of your time. Don't do that this time, because remember, you can't go back and repeat it. You can't go back and have a do-over, even though a lot of DVDs now you can go back and they have these alternate endings, these alternate scenes. No, that's not real life. Time marches on. So let me ask you, what are you doing with your time? What are you doing with the time that God has given you? What are you doing with the time that God is giving you? What are you doing with that? Are you wasting it? Are you squandering it? Think about it now. Each tick of the clock is a second that you'll never get back, ever. You'll never get it back. Each moment that second hand goes around, each minute that it goes around is a minute you'll never get back. What are you doing with it? What are you doing with it? What do you say? Let's start today. Let's start today. Let me and you, let me and you agree. Let's start redeeming the time. Okay? You and me. Let's start redeeming the time starting today. Do all of the things, think about all the things that I've talked about today regarding redeeming the time. What are you going to do with your time today? The moment you stop this podcast, what are you going to do for the rest of the day? Maybe you're watching this at the end of the podcast or at the end of the day. What are you going to do with tomorrow? How's that going to happen? Okay? So I want you to think about that. Think about redeeming the time that you have. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of Lifeline for Daily Living. If something I have said today has raised a concern or a question in you, there's a number of ways that you can contact me. Number one, you can call me at my office, 573-732-4575. Again, 573-732-4575. You can also email me. My email address is lifelineonline@hotmail.com. Again, lifelineonline@hotmail.com. A third way, if you're watching this on Facebook or even if you're watching it on YouTube, you can private message me. I'll get back to you just as soon as I can. I want to help you. I want to help you redeem the time that you have left and make every moment of every day, of every month, of every week, of every year count. Redeeming the time. Let's say we do that, okay? Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you right here next time on Lifeline for Daily Living.